It's time to strap in and get ready for the front stretch. Presented by Joe's Karting. Dan and Dirk are live in the studio today, ready to hear from you at 402-573-0590.
Well, good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. Karting with a K, fast-paced white-knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs. With NASCAR qualifying going on at, is that 11:30 Eastern today, or is that 11:30 our time? It's Eastern, so it'd be 10:30 our time.
It's got to be Eastern, yeah.
10:30 our time. The best thing for you to do, go over to Joe's Karting, do a little bit of racing. Actually, I don't think they're going to be open yet. So you're going to have to wait until after qualifying's over with the head over there. The race is set to kick off today at 1 p.m. our time, or coverage is at 1 p.m. our time with green flag just after 2 p.m. And by the way, for any of the Pick'ems contest fans, I double-checked this week. I goofed a little bit by a half an hour last week and caused a little bit of a ruckus in the Fantasy League, but we got it all straightened out and everyone's good. Welcome to the front stretch. I'm Dan Taylor and my co-host Dirk Houston. We've survived another wide open weekend at Iowa Speedway.
Actually, some good racing, some new faces. We met some new people.
Yep. A lot of great people. We met some a new sponsor that came on to David Starr's number 99. Travis from Honest Wrench, and I think
Travis Troy.
I think Travis brought everybody from the shop, every relative he has, because it looked like a posse walking down pit road when we were going to the car for the driver introductions. And
David had the biggest posse there yesterday.
Easily, and it was cool to see all that because they all had nice bright orange shirts.
Yep, they were all in high vis, and amongst them was our contest winners, Tara and David Ackerson.
David ended up finishing sixth. He did this smart thing, what a lot of people do, puts as many people into the contest, and he gets his his wife to enter into the contest. And she enjoys racing, so she jumps in for these 5-week contests. And thankfully, she did, because she ended up winning the contest, and David ended up finishing sixth. So she got the garage passes for the Xfinity Series, and they got to go meet with all this. They get to do all the stuff. David's going to hopefully call in here in just a little bit. By the way, David, the number I gave you on my business card, that's the right number. I double-checked with the sounder that was coming in, 402-573-0590.
But
good
David,
for them. That
David
was really
held
cool.
the pit sign for the 99 yesterday, and Tara caught tires.
Yep. There's a video on our Facebook page. If you want to get an idea, just a slight glimpse, there's pictures of, thanks to you, David and Tara got to meet series director Wayne Otten. They got to meet track president Jimmy Small, and they got to kind of walk around. They got to go to the drivers' meeting, thanks to David Starr Racing, and see what that was like. They got to stand and talk to Mike Helton. There was a lot of exposure there. They got to. There's so many things they could have done because David Starr Racing needs the extra help, so it worked out really great.
Yeah, and there's not too many people that get to go over on a race weekend and get thanked by the track president for coming out.
Yep.
That was pretty cool.
Usually you got to fork up some pretty good dough to be a sponsor to get thanked like that, like Casey's General Store or U.S. Cellular, which, by the way,
who provided our dinner at Casey's, on Friday night. That pizza we got to eat with the salad. And
good news for Iowa Speedway and U.S. Cellular. They announced during the drivers' meeting on Saturday morning that they have extended their contract for another 2 years for that race. So that'll be the longest running sponsorship for Iowa Speedway. I believe that'll reach an 11-year agreement when it's up for renewal.
Yep. That's a great deal. Great for the Speedway. They've been with the track. They sponsored the very first Xfinity race at the Speedway, and that was back when I think 2009, when they just had one race. I was at the first one, and of course now they've got 2 races there every year. And then they even sponsor a car. They've been sponsoring Brendan the last couple of years in the race. So he had a solid run yesterday. Car wasn't where they wanted to be. But one thing that is very unique to this weekend is when they run with the K&N series, they were actually begging for overnight rain between Friday and Saturday because they use 2 different tire compounds between the 2 series. So the guys go out, and you saw it at qualifying yesterday. The first section of qualifying was 20 minutes. There were like 3 cars that went out in the first 18 minutes because they said there's nothing on the track. You're just going to slide around. And it showed in their practice times from their second practice the day before. the pole was about 0.8 slower than practice was. And they just couldn't get that rubber off the track. And they said it's going to be there for the first 20 or 30 laps of the race. But surprisingly enough, there was not a caution in the first segment of the race.
Such a great weekend. We had a lot of fun. Can't thank Iowa Speedway enough for all the hospitality they do for us. Just, being nice. It's amazing how that's a shock in today's age. But, we go to other tracks and, we're nobody special, but William and Jimmy and everybody at Iowa Speedway takes great care of everybody in that media center, and they take great care of our sponsors and our winners too. So we can't thank them enough for all the hospitality and the great action, the great racing. It's been a great year at Iowa Speedway, and fingers crossed, we are 1 year closer to being able to say there's a Cup Series race coming to Iowa Speedway. Nothing confirmed yet, but you can kind of feel the.
We'll put it this way.
You can look at the grandstands at Indy and say it's getting close.
That's what I was just going to say. There will definitely be more people at Iowa Speedway for a Cup race than there are at Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Yeah,
that was a real sad display last week.
And that's what we've come to expect. But the thing is, I think with Indy, it's starting to swing in the other direction. I think the racing was good once Truex and Kyle Busch wrecked themselves out of the race. It was good because then there was quite a few cautions for restarts. The restarts were wild, and there was some pretty good ability to pass.
The 8 or 10 cars that were racing for third, while Kyle and Martin were still on the track, were now racing for the win.
Right. Today's show, we're going to recap the race at Indy and Iowa Speedway. Then we're going to try to talk to David Ackerson and Tara Ackerson about their time. Listen, they're police officers, and we obviously thank them for their dedication and their protection. But I told David, I said, listen, you got a full day ahead of you on Saturday. Feel free to sleep in on Sunday because today's his only day off. So we're going to see if David's able to call in.
I don't sleep.
That's true. And then we'll also talk with Stan Cisar in turn number 2 to recap I-80 and Eagle Raceway, the Friday night, Saturday night dirt track action here in Omaha. And then turn 3, silly season's in full swing, Dirk. It's all starting to fall into place. We'll try to get you caught up as best as possible. And then in turn number 4, we will talk a little bit about the couple of weeks to come and the race to come today. By the way, like we mentioned when we opened up the show, qualifying is this morning in about an hour and a half, actually about 2.5 hours at about 10:30. NASCAR's trying a new experiment where they're going to put qualifying on the same day as the race. You've talked about it, Dirk. They've done this in the past.
Correct. It's not a new experiment, but they've tweaked it just a little bit. So.
Teams are aiming for this because I think they're kind of tired of showing up on a Wednesday and then being at the track for so long on a Sunday race day. So they're like, can we condense the schedule just a little bit? Let's try it at a couple of tracks and see how it works, because teams were then able to fly in on Thursday rather than Wednesday, which saved hotel rooms.
Well, and as we were talking yesterday, I'm going to say 80% of the Cup pit crews were at Iowa Speedway yesterday, working teams, because there were several guys that I personally know that I was talking to, and 2 o'clock race today. We'll be on a plane by 6 tonight, drinking a beer and getting ready to go work Pocono tomorrow. And it was so funny because one of the guys says, "You didn't hear we got to drive back?" And he goes, "I don't care. It's more time to drink beer." So you wouldn't mind being on that pit crew, Dan.
Absolutely. Let's recap the race that happened at Indy last weekend. It looked like Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. were going to stink up the show, and
they did stink up the show
for quite a while. I believe
laps.
Kyle Busch ended up winning the first 2 stages with Martin Truex Jr. The top 3 all finished the same in stages 1 and 2. Kyle Busch first, Martin Truex Jr. second, and Ryan Blaney third. They all finished that way in stage 2, but the cars behind that kind of mix it up just a little bit. But rough days after everything ended up folding out. Go back to the Kyle Busch situation and what happened with him. Those two were working with each other on most of the restarts to start the day. But then there was radio chatter between, I believe it was the 18 driver and crew chief that we're not going to be teammates anymore. We're racing for this. And when the
and
78
that was Kyle
heard
Busch,
that,
by the way.
Yeah. When the 78 heard that, he said, okay, game on. Then we're going to race. Yeah. Teammate thing is off. We're not going to work with each other to make sure that you and I are out front, however it ends up being. And I think that's what inevitably resulted in Martin Truex Jr. drove it in the corner knowing that he had to have a clearance. He had to have the lead coming off too in order to be able to get that clean air and start to pull away from Kyle Busch. Unfortunately, the car broke loose and took both of them out.
But the reason the car broke loose is because Kyle Busch drove it in on the outside of him and took the air away, the cushion that holds the car.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what brought Martin around. And at that speed, I think they both maybe overdrove the corner just a little bit.
Yeah.
But obviously Martin knew he had to, so he
Yeah.
drove it deep. And when Kyle just stayed on the outside of him, he pretty much knew he was toast, and he came around and ended up taking them both completely out. And, of course, then as Adam Stevens was walking through the pits back to the garage area, he went by the 78 pit crew, and one of the pit crew guys started clapping for him, which started a small altercation.
There's a whole the great thing is there's a video about it. There's so many times that this doesn't make it onto the World Wide Web.
A video with audio.
Right, and plenty of beeps to censor for the kids and the more sensitive to that language. But your thoughts on that after everything happened Monday and Tuesday, we came down and found out that I believe it was two of the crew members have been suspended for 3 races of Martin Truex Jr. So the 2 that were involved in that altercation with Adam Stevens, we don't know if there was any penalty to Adam Stevens because Joe Gibbs Racing just announced those 2 crew members for the 78. When I first saw it, I thought NASCAR had suspended him, so I got pretty up in arms about it.
Well, that's what the article said. The headline just said they were suspended. It didn't say anything about JGR, so you had to read the article.
Yeah.
And because I was just like you.
Yeah.
Why did NASCAR suspend them and not Adam Stevens? He was in their pit box.
Right.
And that is why NASCAR did nothing. Adam Stevens was in their pit box, which is what the one guy just kept telling them, get out of my pit box.
Yeah. It's an unwritten rule. It's nothing that NASCAR could have done about it because crews can walk in and out of pit boxes all you want, but when it's kind of an unwritten rule. It's just like in the dirt track. Don't walk into my trailer and expect to be able to just throw your,
thrown out,
cussing at me and screaming at me. I'm going to, this is my front porch. You walk onto my house, I've got a right to defend my territory.
Right.
It's alpha male stuff. We've seen it all since the beginning of time. And it's an unwritten rule in NASCAR. So NASCAR couldn't have done anything about it, but Joe Gibbs Racing...
NASCAR could have done something. NASCAR can do something about anything. There's a spot in the rule book that says all decisions by the officials are
true.
final.
That's true.
So,
and actions detrimental to stock car racing.
Exactly.
It could have fallen under that umbrella too. You're right. But Joe Gibbs Racing was the one that I didn't realize this, that they end up the 78 team is hired from Joe Gibbs Racing.
Right.
That's a team that pit crew trains with Joe Gibbs Racing during the week. They work with the 18, the 11 team. They work with all these guys on a regular basis, and it's hired out to the 78 team on race day and on race weekend. And so that's where Joe Gibbs Racing gets the right to be able to suspend these guys.
The coach benched a couple players.
Yeah,
That's
I think it's kind of crap that Joe Gibbs Racing did something to the crew members of the 78, and quite frankly, it opens it up for a little bit of conspiracy. While they didn't do anything to Adam Stevens, who was the one that it felt to me watching that video, he's the one that started the whole thing.
Well, I don't know if he technically started the whole thing, but he definitely got it going when he stopped because the one guy was just clapping at him when he walked by. Because the guys from the 78 knew if Kyle hadn't have drove in so deep, there wouldn't have been any crash.
Yeah.
Everybody says, well, Martin Truex lost it. He lost it because of Kyle. Kyle knew exactly what he was doing. And if Martin could have driven through that, it would have been a heck of a job.
If you want to call in and give your thoughts on the suspension of the two crew members for the 78, 402-573-0590. We're going to keep moving forward because we got just a couple of minutes left in the turn before we head over and talk to Stan Cisar. So Kyle Busch ends up finishing 34th. Martin Truex Jr. 33rd, and then just for some reason nobody could keep their car straight after that. Clint Boyer 30th, Kurt Busch 29th, Kyle Larson 28th, Jimmy Johnson 27th, Ryan Blaney 23rd. These are all top contenders.
Denny Hamlin goes 3rd to 17th and a half a lap at the end in the overtime.
Austin Dillon 21st, Ty Dillon 19th, Denny Hamlin 17th, Paul Menard 16th. I mean, it was
It looked like Daytona.
Yeah. Here's my thoughts on Casey Kane, who ended up winning this race. I don't think Casey had the car to win this race.
Oh.
Had we not had any of those cautions, it'd probably been another outside the top 10 finish.
He had the race won until the caution there with 7 or 8 laps to go or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had the race won at that point. I don't think he got out enough. I don't think anybody was going to catch him. But once they had the restart, I don't think he was going to win there.
Yeah.
He's not big on the restarts. He's just not.
But what a great restart he had to get out in front of Brad Keselowski after Brad Keselowski had taken the lead from him.
On the previous restart.
Right, on one of those restarts, Casey actually ended up restarting second. And like you were just kind of alluding to there, I thought that was it for Casey. Brad was going to walk away with this because he's had a much better season. But Casey was able to get a great restart, able to pull Brad into turn 1 and clear him off turn 2. And that's when I gave it to Casey and said, okay, you earned it. The opportunity came up and you earned it. He deserved to win it at that point. I just don't think he had I guess my process of saying that was I don't think he had that good of a car to be able to drive to the front without all those other cautions and all those other cars being wrecked out.
Well, the other ironic part about this is, will it save Casey's job?
Yeah.
I don't know, but he was the last Hendrick car on the track.
Yep.
All Hendrick stars were gone.
What a bad day for Dale Earnhardt Jr. Ends up finishing 36th. That guy just, I think it's beginning to be another case like Tony Stewart. Retirement just can't come soon enough.
Yeah, I was reading a meme here over the weekend that Dale had signed a new crew chief, Win Wan Soon from China.
All right, while we got a couple minutes left before we head over to turn 2, congratulations, Casey Kane gets the win, punches his ticket to the playoffs as he now has a playoff berth, and we're starting to get a lot of winners this year that we weren't expecting to see, and it's really starting to play havoc on the playoff picture. Over for Iowa Speedway, congratulations to Ryan Preece. This is a story where Ryan had the opportunity to go race a couple of Xfinity Series races.
Two races.
Well, he had an opportunity to go race several. I think the deal was 5 or 6 Xfinity races with another team, but it was a lower tier team, and Ryan said, no, I'm going to stay with Joe Gibbs Racing, and I'm going to race these 2 races at Iowa.
He got some advice from some of the Cup stars, and so yeah, he's run 2 races. He ran second and had the fastest car in New Hampshire. It just got behind on some pit stop strategy and ended up second, of course, then wins at Iowa. His teammate, the other Joe Gibbs development driver, by the way, he also had the pole at Iowa. His teammate,
Kyle Benjamin.
There you go.
Started outside pole.
Yeah, was number 2 qualifier and number 2 finisher. And we actually spent a few minutes. They've got doing their PR work. Randy Fuller, who for the last 12 or 15 years has been the PR man for Carl Edwards. So we did get to talk to, as Dan calls him, Randy Palmer. We did spend some time with him.
Former series organizer for the Nebraska 360s. I tend to get names mixed up every once in a while. But great battle between Ryan Preece and Kyle Benjamin. Those two fought it out for a lot of laps during that race at Iowa Speedway. And Ryan did a phenomenal job battling with the 7 car. Justin Allgaier and Brian Scott.
Justin ended up with the second segment win.
Yep. Just great battles. Elliott Sadler had a great battle with Ryan Preece. I mean, Ryan earned a lot of respect yesterday at Iowa Speedway with the way he was able to win that race. It didn't scream to me like he was sitting down in the best car that was just miles in front of everybody else. This kid drove an amazing race, and congratulations to him, and hopefully it works out for him.
Led a caution-free first segment.
Yeah.
And led it all 60 laps. And I didn't see exactly what he ended up leading laps because, like I said, Allgaier won the second segment.
141 laps for Preece.
Total.
Yeah.
So 60% of the race, 200.
Yep.
Well, they went in overtime, so a couple.
We got to move on to turn number 2. Stan Cisar's waiting to talk to us about results from I-80 Speedway and Eagle Raceway. We'll be back here on the front stretch.
This week's Young Gun is Alan Hopp from Harlan, Iowa. Alan got into racing after watching his father, Gary Hopp, race for years. Alan got his first ride when he was 7 years old, and just 5 years later, he won his first go-kart championship. The next year, he moved into the B-Mod class, and in his 3rd year, won a championship at his home track of Shelby County Speedway. In the last few years, Alan's moved into the late model class, competing throughout the Midwest. This year, he plans on racing weekly at Shelby County Speedway, where he has his eyes set on a track championship. He also plans on racing as many Deary Brothers and Malvern Banks Super Late Model races as he can. His career goals include winning a Malvern Banks Super Late Model Championship, winning a Lucas Oil Late Model race, and even trying his hand at a sprint car. Make sure you keep your eye out for Alan Hopp in the number 80 Performance Grading, Envy Suspension, Polly Jones Funeral Home, AgCom Insurance Late Model at a track near you. This week's Young Gun is presented by I-80 Speedway, home of the Silver Dollar Nationals, July 20th, 21st, and 22nd.
I-80 Speedway is your home for NASCAR. Before you see them compete on Sunday, come see them make their name each Friday night with NASCAR weekly racing action. See the Midwest's best modified late model stock car and sport compact drivers compete at Nebraska's premier dirt track. Located just down the road on Interstate 80 at exit 420. This Friday night, it's kids boxcar races. Grandstands open at 5, hot laps at 6:30 with racing at 7:15. i80speedway.com for more information.
Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs has taken a page out of IMCA's rulebook and gone crate. These brand new low-emission engines will still have you white-knuckling it all through the Metro's fastest indoor facility. Joe's Karting is now friendly for all skill levels with their brand new Honda-powered engines. It's time to get to Joe's today and find out what drivers like Jack Dover, Shaylee Bate, and Andrew Kosiski have known for years. Located in Council Bluffs and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K.
Dan and Dirk are rolling into turn 2 with a little attitude on the front stretch.
Dang right, we got a little attitude rolling into turn 2. It's time to talk a little dirt track action with Stan Cisar, the voice of the Speedway. Stan, you've been a busy man this weekend, working Friday night at I-80 Speedway with Chris Krug, and then Saturday night at America's home track at Eagle Raceway. How you feeling this morning?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm bright and shiny. Turn 2 this time instead of turn number 3. So I had to get my stuff together here.
Yeah, we kind of pushed you a little bit with getting some of the results with I-80 and Eagle. Real quick, let's touch on what happened Friday night at I-80 Speedway. I was getting some updates from Chris Krug, but you guys had a pretty packed house and some pretty good racing going on.
Yeah, it was a salute to Labor Night. All the labor unions were out in force. We had a great crowd in the grandstand, and the racing on the track, all 7 classes. Looked like we started off pretty good, and then we had a few incidents in the features that took quite a long time. One in particular, they had an accident on the backstretch, and a piece of one-car sheet metal got stuck in between the guardrail on the infield there, and they couldn't get this piece of sheet metal unstuck out of the guardrail. And meanwhile, the field was touring the track under the caution flag, and I think this was on the second lap of the race. There were still 17 laps to go on the board, and I think they ran over 20 caution flag laps.
Oh,
they ran actually more laps under caution than they raced in that one. But we'll get to that a little bit later. All 7 classes on board. In the Sport Compact division, it was Jeremy Bolin out of Percival, Iowa, picking up the win. Hobby Stock division, it was one of those usual Hobby Stock Friday nights. Luke Ramsey and Jason Cole, and that was a war that might have got just a little bit out of hand before that race was over. They were doing the old Harry Hog rubbing and racing quite often in that one, and I think that's something they're going to have to take a look at because those cars are so evenly matched. Nobody wants to give an inch, and things. There was a lot of racing that was kind of right on the edge of being called in that one, but Luke Ramsey prevailed for the win. In the stock car feature, newcomer Jed Williams out of Shickley, Iowa, came in and he schooled the guys. He had that number 77 car really working well, and of course all the usual suspects right in there behind him: Nick Woodard and Scott Carlson and the whole gang. Nick Steyer with a top 5 finish. So the stock car class that never disappoints. In the sport modified division, another one, close, hard racing, and a guy that was having one of his best runs of the season, Justin Bell out of Louisville, Nebraska. He and Sean Harker going at it for the win. It was Shark Week this week, and they got together a little bit down the backstretch, and Bell got the worst end of that deal. Unfortunately, he went off on the hook. Shark went on to win. Sean Harker went on to win that feature, but right behind him, the Young Guns were in force, as usual, and a great race in that sport modified division. In the modifieds, also another good race that came right down to the wire. It looked like Justin Zeidner was going to dominate. He was out in a brand new Edge car. He had been running GRTs. He brought a Joss Motion machine out and looked good. And running the top side. The bottom side comes in. Jared Heffelman had an awful good run late in the race, and Justin hung on for the win, but it was not without putting up a fight, but he had a pretty fast race car.
Yeah, Jesse Dennis has really seen it come on strong just before the Silver Dollar Nationals and then during the Silver Dollar Nationals, getting that number 70 car figured out.
Well, Dennis was up in there too. He was up in the top 5, I believe, but it was Heffelman that came quite a ways in the 15H that was in that second spot, and he gave him a pretty good tussle there toward the end of the race. But in the bragging rights, the crate late model class, it's kind of good to see this guy finally get a win. Dave Cook, Old Ironhead, one of the guys that's not running a crate engine. He's still running that spec engine in car number 9, and I tell you what, he had an awful good run. And it was good to see Dave get the win because Dave's been racing, I think, at Iowa Speedway as long as it's been around. I was announcing back in the early 90s, and Dave was one of the competitors out in the old Pro-Am street stock division. And it was good to see him get a win, like I say, in that deal. Super late models.
I bet the fans sure enjoyed not seeing Jacob Brown win again.
Well, we talk about that. Jacob Brown, he hovered back around the 5th or 6th spot for most of the race. He started coming on at the end, and I think he got up to 2nd at the end. But Dave had a pretty good lead build up by then, and there were no cautions. And Jacob's still he's still the guy to beat week in, week out in that deal. But Dave was on his game Saturday night, and he schooled the boys down there at I-80. Super late model division. This is one I got to talk about because we just came off the Silver Dollar Nationals. Those guys were down in the 17-second bracket on their qualifying nights. The fastest laps run by the Lucas Oil cars were in that low to mid 17-second bracket. This is in the SLMR, which does have some specs and some rules that limit the engines and limit those cars just a little bit tire-wise and engine-wise. Brian Kaziski in car number 52, he was in the 17-second bracket, and I think he went around there as fast, or probably I think faster than I've ever seen a Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series car get around I-80 Speedway. He was in the 17-second bracket, and if you watch that car, it had corner speed like no other. I mean, he just breathed the throttle going into one. He was back on the gas immediately, and that front end stuck so good he drove it right around the top side, and he was on a string. And man, by the end of the race, even with a few caution flags, he was, gosh, I got to say, at least a half a lap in front of the second place car. I think he lapped maybe up to the 7th place car.
Wow!
So it's a pretty dominating performance by Brian. I tell you, it looked like the old Steve Kaziski 52 from 20 years ago.
Yeah, if he ever gets to that status, he'll be able to race with the Lucas boys.
Well, I tell you what, Ben Schaller, who had the best finish against the Lucas Oil guys, come home 14th. He was probably half a second off those times, wow. And Ben was looking strong as he always does down around the low side, and he came a long way. I think he finished 3rd in the final standings. I just remembered winners' names, to do a recap, but wasn't writing things down. But I think he was in the top in there. I think in the 3rd place.
Yep, and
he had nothing for Brian. Pospisil had a good run. Zeitner had a good run. Josh Krug early in the race was up there, and he kind of lost the setup as the race went on, but. That kind of calmed Chris down a little bit. He was his voice was starting to the range of octave was going up just a little bit. It kind of reminded me of you a little bit down there when Josh was racing. But hey, it was a great night of racing, and it ended up being a little longer than we'd like. But I think everybody was down there, had a great time, and it was a big crowd out for Union Night, and those guys, they had a fun time at the races.
Let's move on to America's home track, Eagle Raceway. Saturday night racing action kicked things off. How'd the IMCA Sport Compact A feature roll out?
Well, actually, Sport Compact was the 4th race on the bill, but it was a pretty good race. Right down to the end, there were 3 or 4 cars going at it right down to that final checkered flag, and there was one exception that hasn't been around much this season, but he came back with this new car, and I think he's going to be a player. It was Cole Creco picking up the win, but it was one of those wars between he and Dylan Richards and Tyler Moshek in the 23. Had a pretty good race. Along comes Nick Lindblad. Most of these guys running the Chevrolet products, with the Ecotech engines. Well, the Ford Focus has a Z-Tech engine in it. It's one of the 4 cylinders, and he had this little hatchback Focus, and it looks like almost a smaller car than the rest of them, but the thing was flying, and he ends up running second, and it was a 4-car battle right down to that final checkered flag, and I think Creco took the win by maybe a half a car length over Lindblad,
Wow.
and another car length back was Dylan Richards. And Creco kind of banging off one another as usual. You know, those guys race hard. Those cars are very, very equally prepared, the top 5 or 6 cars in that class, and Creco takes the win. That's going to extend his points lead. Nick Lindblad comes home second. Dylan Richards, Tyler Moshak, and Sean Hine out of Beatrice comes home with a 5th place finish.
All right, let's go through the feature. I kind of crossed you up a little bit there by jumping into the Sport Compacts, but let's start off with the first feature of the night.
That was the Sport Modified feature. You know, and Harker, you know, had a good run on Saturday night, and it looked like he was moving up through the field there pretty good to have another good run. I thought he might do the double, but in the end, it was your points leader, Trent Roth, out of Columbus, Nebraska, picking up the win. And a guy that had his best run of the season, Logan Thompson, in car number 9T, came home in the 2nd spot. The Shark was 3rd. 44D of Derek Hall out of Lincoln, another guy having a good season, was in the 4th place finish. And Matt Andrews, who's been very consistent lately in that 22A, rounded out the top 5 finishers. That's going to extend the point lead a little bit going into last night's action. Roth had about a 7-point margin over Harker, and he picked up a couple more points last night.
Was that Roth's first or second win on the season?
I think it was his 2nd win of the season. You know, his brother Anthony won one last week, and they've been trying to come up with a week that they both end up on the front stretch, and it seems like they've been kind of alternating just a little bit. If Anthony wins, Trent runs second. If Trent happens to win, Anthony doesn't get the win. So last night it was Trent's turn, and it was a pretty popular victory. In car number 14, T. Roth had him covered running the high side of the speedway. Hobby stock feature comes up next, and this one was really a war. And you know, another one that might be a little bit controversial, but we talked in Victory Lane. You know, in the interview, it was good, close, hard racing, and the guy that's your current points leader only had a 3-point margin over Roy Armstrong going into last night's races, and Jeff Ware out of Beatrice, Nebraska, or out of Columbus, picked up the win in car number 83. Albert Keeney in the 85 ran in the 2nd spot. Dave Carter, the 2C, was 3rd. Last week's winner, Brett Sadoff in the 11th B, and Tyler Jackson's first top 5 guy that we have a lot of fun with. Whoa, Nelly, you know, but anyhow, good run for Jackson. He's had a lot of bad luck. He crashed a car pretty bad over at I-80 last year, but he's got a pretty good car this year, and he's hovering around that top 5 last night. He finally got one. Early in the race, Roy Armstrong working his way up through the field, and he and another car kind of got together a little bit and got him a little bit out of shape, and Jeff Ware happened to be in exactly the right place and tapped him just a little bit, and Roy went around, managed to keep the car going, but lost an awful lot of track position. He didn't quite make it back into the top 5, so that's going to extend the points lead a little bit for Ware going into next week's races.
It'll get interesting. Roy's a tough contender, and I believe defending track champion, right?
Oh, many-time defending track champion, and the word is that his son, Adam, is coming back to the hobby stock division after dabbling in the sport mods and the A mods in the last couple of years. He's building a new hobby stock, and he's going to be back in that hobby stock division. So Roy's days might be numbered, because whenever Adam was around, he took the measure of Dad pretty good. So got to keep an eye on next season. We might see the 6A back in action as well as the 6R. And the modified A feature, boy, what a race this one was. And this was another one of those deals. There were 3 or 4 cars duking it out for the entire 20 laps. Picking up the win last night, the A train out of Omaha, Nebraska, Dustin Anderson, car number 8D, by about a car length over the Wolfman. Justin Wolf comes home in the 2nd spot. I talked to his dad a little bit after the races. They put a new shock package on that really, really worked, and they're real happy with the way that car turned out. Nate Thompson, a guy that has been down on his luck a little bit, he was hovering around the lead. Matter of fact, led probably half of that race in the 3T out of Fremont, comes home 3rd. The other half of the Anderson Brothers Racing team, Chad Anderson, is 4th, and the other half of the Roth Brothers Racing team, Anthony Roth, comes home in the 5th spot, top 5 in car number 60. So, and it was one of those races that had the fans on their feet for the entire 20 laps. Great slicing and dicing, and guys running up on the high side in the crumbs, and it was a pretty entertaining race.
And that moves us up to the big feature of the night. Again, I cross-jumped just a little bit by jumping into the Sport Compacts early. They were next on the bill, but we've already covered that one. So let's jump into the sprint car feature for the night.
Well, a lot of guys get crossed up, especially coming out of turn 2. Usually you got the backstretch to get things sorted out before you head into turn 3. You pick your line, but in turn 2, sometimes you get crossed up a little bit.
Well, we are in turn 2, so it's all good.
Pick a turn I don't get crossed up, but we'll move on.
That one just outside of Des Moines going to Newton, Iowa, he did pretty good.
I didn't. Boy, you teed it up in that first segment, and I was going to swing away, but I chose not to, and I can tell you about that a little bit later. I'll tell you what, in this Race Saver IMCA Sprint Car division, another new winner last night. Another guy picking up, I think, the 10th different winner. We've had 3 repeat winners. Each one of those guys won 2 features, but the 10th different winner, I believe, on the season. Ron Love out of Lincoln, Nebraska, picked up the win, and he never put a wheel wrong the entire event. He came out of the second row and had an awful good race. Another guy that's been coming on strong, but he's going to start working his way back in the lineup a little bit. That's Chase Weiler in the Flying Zero. He comes home with a second-place finish, just ahead of his brother, Nate Weiler, in the 4W. Nate Weiler, another guy, really likes to run the bottom side of that speedway, and it was a great race going on around mid-pack for almost the entire 25 laps. Shaylee Bade, Caleb Johnson out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. His dad happens to be the track manager up at the Jackson Motorplex, and Caleb got interested in the sprint car deal. Of course, he's been hanging around that deal up in Sioux Falls for a number of years, and his second year in this Race Saver division, and he's coming on pretty darn strong, and he really loves Eagle Raceway. He's been this is his second trip down. He wanted to try to get tuned up for the Nationals, that's coming up Labor Day weekend, that big race, and run the top side, run the bottom side. Nate slipped by him for third late in the race and kind of went to school a little bit. I said, "You learned something?" He says, "Oh, absolutely." And he picked up a 4th-place finish, and then rounding out the top 5, the world-famous Toby Chapman survives the war with Shaylee Bade and Tyler Druke. Those 3 guys going at it, guys and gals going at it for about the last 5 laps of that race in a torrid battle for that top 5 finish. But all in all, another great night of racing at America's home track, and when the whole thing was ended, they put the hillbilly slip and slide up in turns 1 and 2, and had all the kids and a lot of people, even some adults and some of the crew members and a few drivers slipping down that thing. They had the water going down it all the way from the top of the guardrail. They filled it up with a bunch of dirt, and they laid the sheet down, had the water coming down there, and they were still doing that when I left. So,
wow.
Hope somebody gets some videos posted of that.
They were.
I think
they were Facebook Live on that.
They had some, but I believe it was it was kind of a work in progress. And they were trying to get the stream of water right. They were trying to build up the dirt underneath that, so they had a little bit more of a jump start, because it was a little steeper going from the track all the way up to the top of the guardrail there between turns 1 and 2. But by the time they got it perfected, I think they were hustling down there pretty good. And of course, we touched just a little bit earlier, coming up just about a month away, the Race Saver IMCA Sprint Cars Nationals will be held right at Eagle Raceway. As of Friday, I believe we're up to 81 entries so far, and I think 15 or 16 states thus far. Last year we had 117. We're hoping we can at least equal or surpass that. It's going to be 3 days of fun and a lot of racing.
That's going on August 31st for the open house, and then Friday, September 1st, Saturday, September 2nd, and then the big day is Sunday, September 3rd. You can get your 3-day passes in advance, eagleraceway.com. Stan, always do love having you on the show. Always appreciate it, bud.
The 3-day pass for $35. I said, that's like stealing. I mean, for the, you're going to see 15, 16 heat races a night, all sprint cars, probably from a K or an L feature all the way down to an A feature on each one of the qualifying nights, and then you come back. There's going to be only one support class on each of those qualifying nights, along with the sprint cars this year. So it's going to be a great event. And then coming up the following weekend, the Nebraska Cup. That's going to be 3 totally different classes of cars. The Race Saver IMCA winged sprint cars will be back on the card. The War Series, the Wingless Auto Racing Series, non-winged 410 sprint cars will be in the house, as well as the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series. their only appearance at Eagle in 2017. So 2 big weeks of racing to cap off the year, but we still got another month to go to clear up these points battles, and a couple of them starting to tighten up just a little bit.
Stan Cisar, do love having you on the show. Thanks, buddy.
All right, man. We'll see you.
Have a good day, Stan.
See you, Kurt. Dirk.
Kurt.
I've been called worse.
Yes.
I've been called worse.
Somebody called somebody else the wrong name on this show. Finally, it wasn't just me. I'm going to take a break and gather myself up. We'll be back in turn number 3.
Are you looking to book your next outing? Look no further than Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Located just north of Bass Pro Shop, Joe's Karting can handle outings of well over 100-plus people. Bachelor parties, corporate outings, team building, birthday parties, and much more. Give Buddy a call today and reserve your outing. Joe's will even work with local restaurants to cater your event. Book yours today at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the front stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into turn 3 on the front stretch.
402-573-0590. It is your open line to be able to talk about the latest news and notes that we're going to cover here in the next 10 minutes as we're rolling into turn number 3. 402-573-0590. Give your thoughts on the silly season for NASCAR. What's going to happen? Who's going to go where? Who's going to be racing in what stable in 2018? Dirk, if I kept hearing for the longest time, silly season was really waiting for Brad Keselowski. And we talked about it 100 times. Most of the people expected him to re-sign with Roger Penske. But I kind of felt like, and I think you agree with me, he was just waiting to see what was available. If a little bit better of a ride, or maybe a little bit sweeter of a deal would come about, maybe he would entertain it. But I think he was just kind of in no big hurry to re-sign with Roger and Team Penske, and he was just going to kind of see what was available and kind of what a lot of NFL players do. They test the free market agent. What the landscape, what's available, what team is interested in me, what package can they put together? Because like you talked about, along with just Brad going over and racing at a new team, if that's what he decided to do, he also had his truck series that needed to possibly switch manufacturers, switch shops, switch everything over. So that would have been a big ordeal, not just signing Brad Keselowski to a new team. If it had been Hendrick Motorsports, Stewart-Haas Racing, Richard Childress Racing, whichever team was able to sneak him away, it'd have been a big operation to pull the entire thing over.
Well, I was never in the camp that Brad was leaving Penske.
Mm-hmm.
I think what was holding everything up was what was Penske going to do for Brad's truck teams. And I don't think Penske wanted to say, I'm not going to help you out, or we're not going to run you a couple races, whatever it happened to be.
Yeah.
But I think he was waiting to get the deal put together, or the Penske camp was, with Ryan Blaney. And then they knew, okay, now we've got a third Cup team, so now some of our resources, Brad, this is what we're going to have to help your truck team with. Mm-hmm. Because they do put Penske on the truck for, I don't know how many of the, I think 23 truck races, but they do have them on there for a handful. I think that was the holdup for the whole deal. I don't think Brad was looking to go anywhere. I don't think that was even a hint, unless somebody, if Hendrick would have come and said, I will foot the bill for both truck teams for the whole season for 3 years if you come drive the 88. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Brad would have had to look at something like that, but that was never on the table.
From what I understand, the Ryan Blaney deal had been done for a while.
But it had not been announced, and so...
Because I think they were waiting to figure... And see, and this is where it's great to have two different varying opinions, but I think they were waiting on what Brad was doing before Penske announced that Ryan was coming over, because they didn't want to announce that Ryan was coming over. We just don't know if it's going to be a second or a third team. They want to make one formal announcement, not have to go back and make, okay, Ryan's going to be coming over to Penske for full-time, but we don't know what yet. You want all the information in line. And
when they announced it, they said he would be in the third car, mm-hmm. which at that point, you knew Brad was coming back, I did.
Well, that was that, but they announced it afterwards. They announced on Monday that Brad had re-signed in a multi-year extension, and then on Tuesday they came out and said, it was either Tuesday and then Wednesday, but the day later is when they announced Ryan Blaney was coming over for the third team.
Oh, I was thinking it came the other way, but it's irregardless. Ryan and Brad are very close from running together in the Xfinity Series a couple years ago when Ryan was 18 or 19, and Ryan was driving some of Brad's trucks off and on. So, yeah, those two have become very close. Kind of how Brad and Dale Earnhardt Jr. got real close when he was driving for
Is
him.
Penske becoming a powerhouse? I mean, they've got
They are a powerhouse.
In 2018, they're a very good. I agree with you completely. They're a very solid team with Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano. They've struggled the last 10 or 15 races, especially the 22 team. But bringing over Ryan Blaney, it now brings them in contention for a team championship and a manufacturer's championship. Does it form them up to be a powerhouse to really start to go up against Joe Gibbs Racing and Hendrick Motorsports?
Well, I think they've been a powerhouse. I mean, they were at the top of the sport in 2012, I believe, was when Brad won his title, 12 or 13, whenever it was. Then they made their manufacturer switch over to Ford, and that's a lot more than what people think it is. But even though Stuart Haas recently did it and has really excelled there, going from Chevy to Ford, and another team that excelled right away was the Furniture Row bunch, going from Chevy to Toyota. They were starting to gel with Chevrolet, but just kept it rolling.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Penske's group is at the top of the heap right now. They are the number one Ford team, which was one of the things that we speculated on that Tony Stewart was trying to become when they left Hendrick. They knew they were never going to knock Hendrick off Chevy's perch. That wasn't going to happen. Just as Furniture Row is not going to knock Toyota out
Joe
from
Gibbs
under
off
Joe
it.
Gibbs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's like what I always have an issue with is when all the media calls Joe Gibbs Racing Furniture Row a satellite team for Joe Gibbs Racing. If that was the case, then we would see Joe Gibbs Racing up front much more often. We've seen them struggle, even though they receive equipment. They're doing their own thing, and it's proving the fact to be true because Martin Truex Jr. is just putting it to the field.
Well,
and the same thing we saw with Stewart Haas Racing. When Tony won his championship and when Kevin won his championship, they kept calling it a Hendrick satellite team, and I think that kind of frustrated Stewart Haas Racing, and I think that's what made Stewart Haas Racing entertain the idea of leaving because they're like, you know what? Yeah, we're receiving chassis from you guys and we're receiving data, but we're doing our own thing and we're not getting any credit for it because you guys just act like we're showing up to the track and Hendrick is pulling off another car from their hauler.
Well, and it may be at that point, they may be running everything as far as Truex is going that Joe Gibbs is saying to run.
Yeah.
How much Cole Pern is tweaking it, who knows?
And credit's got to be given to Martin Truex Jr. He's been coming on solid the last couple of years.
He's been around so long. He's got, what's this, his 14th year or something like that.
We're getting a little bit sidetracked and a little bit crossed over here, but let's talk a little bit more about Brad Keselowski re-signs. Blaney signs on to go over to Penske in the 12. That opened up the 21 car at Wood Brothers. The next day, I think it was like the next 10 minutes, it was announced.
I think it was all set before anything was ever announced.
Paul Menard was moving over to the 21 of the Wood Brothers, so he'll be leaving RCR, and he's going to be taking that Menard's sponsorship with him.
And it's not his dad, everybody. It's his uncle. Everybody says daddy's money. It's not daddy's money. It's his uncle.
It's family money, and it's good money, and good for Paul. He's got a solid sponsor. Congratulations to him. People are going to say what they want, but you and I talked a little bit about it. I'd really like to see Paul succeed at Wood Brothers because I feel like Wood Brothers is a better organization right now than Richard Childress Racing is.
Well, Paul's paid his dues. He's going to step into a good car. When he came over to Richard Childress, he won Indy his first year. It happens to be his only win, but he had 2 or 3 very solid seasons where he had a ton of top fives. Just didn't quite crack that bubble except for the Indy car race, or not the Indy car race, but at Indy. And he could win in the 21. Yeah. I think he's still got the talent. I just think he's been getting the number 3 car out of Richard Childress' stable every week.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. So I think this is a good move for Paul Menard. Now, everyone says, what's Richard Childress Racing do? Are they going to stay at 2 teams? Are they going to bring Ty over for the 3rd team because they have Austin Dillon and Ryan Newman?
Ty's not coming over. Ty's in a contract with Germain. on the 13 car, and I don't think they're going to let him go anywhere.
Well, that's tough to say because simply enough, we've seen drivers get bought out of contracts before, and this could simply be the deal.
Richard Childress is old school. I don't think he's going to try any of that. I think he's raising his grandkids and saying, look, you signed that contract, you're going to honor it.
We'll have to see what happens. We kind of heard some rumblings in the media center this week that's going to be the case, that Ty Dillon's not coming over.
Carl Edwards.
That Ty Dillon's not going to come over and be that third car. But then Richard Childress Racing came out just moments after all of this was announced on Wednesday, with Blaney signing for the third car, with Menard moving over to Wood Brothers. Richard Childress said, we plan to announce a third team shortly once we have all the details finished. The most common theory is that it's going to be Ty Dillon. That's the most logical person to sit down in a third car at Richard Childress Racing. But then again, it could be one of these guys that's on the hot seat. It's obviously going to be Carl Edwards, because everyone's just saying that it's all the conspiracy.
To the lead, the 27 of Carl Edwards.
Yeah. Why wouldn't he want to leave? I mean, I'd leave the 19 machine at Joe Gibbs Racing to sit out for a year and go race the 27 machine at Richard Childress Racing. That makes total sense. But that's a conspiracy theory for you. No facts really need to be factored into the whole thought process. But who's going to sit down in that 27? We have no idea. But Richard Childress Racing insists that they're going to have a third team in 2018. We'll just have to wait and see. Joining us on the phone now, the winner, the beneficiary of the winner, David Ackerson and Tara Ackerson, winning the Crewman for a Day contest.
Winner by proxy.
How you feeling, David?
I'm feeling well, thanks.
Good to have you back on, bud, and congratulations to you. Talk a little bit about what you got to do this weekend with David Starr Racing.
Well, we showed up on Friday, got to the credentials office just before they closed, and we were able to get the pit passes, and we wandered back to the pits and met up with Jessica, the PR lady. And
garage passes. They're not pit passes at the big show.
Correct. Sorry about that. Garage passes. And so we talked to her a little bit, and she introduced us to David. Super nice guy. And then they were kind of still getting everything ready. They practiced the first session of the day, but they didn't practice the second. So they were working on their car. She was going to introduce us to the car chief, but he was a little tied up. So we just kind of wandered around, checked out the garage area, and then we went up to the stands and watched the K&N race, which was a lot of fun. And then we met back up with them Saturday morning, probably about a little after 11. They just got done qualifying. David wasn't happy with his qualifying effort. His car wasn't right for him, but he's very positive, and he's going to get the best out of the car that he can. So they treated us well. They took us around their hauler and fed us some lunch, and we went over to pit road. We did meet their car chief then. I think it was Jeremy, and he was telling us about the car and showing us the pit box and everything. And he's like, "Well, here, you want to put some fuel in it?" So he shows me how to take the fuel jug and insert it into the little quick fuel connection. And I was a little off, so I spilled, I'm guessing maybe a half a gallon on the pit ground there, but he didn't seem to care too much. So, but they just told us, they told us what we were going to do during the race, and they had us, hold the pit sign out so he knew what stall he was coming to, and then we alternated doing that. And when they did their pit stop, they'd run the tires over the wall and set them down and have us hold them so they didn't wander off, so we didn't get any penalties. So it was a real good time.
Yeah, you guys got to, like you said, got to hold the pit sign and got to hold the tires when they were doing it, and shot a pretty good video of that, of Tara holding the tires and you doing the sign. Have you get to see that video yet?
I have not. No, we stayed at great seats to watch the race, and you get the headset, so you get to talk or listen to the spotters and the drivers and the crew people talking about changes they're going to make, what the car needs, and everything else, along with obviously the spotter telling him his position out there in the other cars. But you really get drawn into it from a whole different perspective than just sitting in the stands and watching. So
I think that's definitely something that I learned when we were there a month ago working for David Starr's team, helping them out, was just you do get a different perspective. You hear a lot of that audio on the race broadcast for like the Cup Series, but when you're actually standing in the pits and you're watching the body motions and the body language and the conversations, it takes on a whole new perspective.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you've got the crew chief up on the box listening, and then he's writing notes and giving them to one of the other pit guys to, go make changes to the tires, pressures, or switch out tires completely with what they had planned to pit with. And they got their little computers on their pit boxes. So it's I think it's a lot more technical than the average person thinks when up in the stand. That they're out there driving around in circles or ovals and put new tires and fuel in it.
So you had a better time winning our promotion than, let's say, the gal that won the promotion where she got to come in with the skydivers and almost get killed and hauled off in the ambulance before the race even starts. So our promotion's better than that one.
I'm going to take this promotion over that one. Yes.
You don't want a blown knee
or hips or both knees or.
I thought I heard rumor it was 2 broken ankles.
Oh,
the way her legs folded up underneath the guy behind her, I said right away, she's hurt. And that wasn't pretty.
I'm sure the ride down was fun.
Yeah. The fall was
quite
fun.
Stuck.
Yeah, it's the landing that hurts.
And then we're standing there, and David Starr says, a couple races ago, the American flag guy come, and he landed right by the car, and the flag draped over the car, and they run this like 10-pound bag. I don't know if it's lead or what's in there, but it holds the flag out while the guy's coming down. And he goes, "That's slammed against the car door and put a big dent in the car."
Hey, we got to take a break.
The arrow.
We got to take a break and head into turn 4 so we don't go too long today. David, congratulations. Glad you and Tara had a good time.
Hey, we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Another contest coming up. No limit on how many times you can win.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll do our best.
All right. Congratulations, bud. We got to take a break. We'll come back at turn number 4. We'll wrap this baby up on the front stretch.
I-80 Speedway is your home for NASCAR. Before you see them compete on Sunday, come see them make their name each Friday night with NASCAR weekly racing action. See the Midwest's best modified late model stock car and sport compact drivers compete at Nebraska's premier dirt track. Located just down the road on Interstate 80 at exit 420. This Friday night, it's kids boxcar races. Grandstands open at 5, hot laps at 6:30 with racing at 7:15. I80Speedway.com for more information.
The official watering hole of the front stretch has you covered any day of the week with the best wings, great burgers, and amazing steaks. Each weekday from 4 to 6 is happy hour, featuring $1 off draft and well drinks plus $4 Luberitas. Mondays are kids' night. Tuesdays are all-you-can-eat wings for $12.95, and the lube even delivers to the Council Bluffs area. Like Quaker Steak and Lube Council Bluffs on Facebook for a full list of weekly events.
Back to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Mid-America Drive, Council Bluffs.
Dan and Dirk are live for one last corner. Give them a call now at 402-573-0590.
As always, we are racing to the finish line. Coming out of turn number 4, brought to you by Quaker Steak and Lube, the official watering hole of the front stretch. You can catch all the action for today's race. Coverage is on NBCSN and MRN starting at 1 o'clock. Green flag set to wave just a little bit after 2 p.m. Make sure you get your picks in on time. Just get them in early. Don't push the limit because sometimes I say it wrong. Just get them in early for today's race at Pocono. Qualifying is set to kick off at about 10:30 this morning for local time. A couple of news and notes that we want to get to before we wrap up the show. With the conclusion of this Crewman for a Day contest, our main goal for going over to Iowa Speedway this weekend was to secure a team for the next Crewman for a Day contest at Kansas Speedway. We've gotten approval with the track, and we've gotten approval with Rick Havenridge, who sponsors all this stuff, to be able to pay for the contest again. And then, so the last thing we're working on is a team. And we actually have 2 or 3 teams that we're working on, but we're pretty sure it's going to be one of them. So we'll have to get you more information on that. Just be listening to the show. And you can also email us, frontstretchradio@gmail.com if you want to get pre-entered into that contest so that you could play the Crewman for a Day contest at Kansas Speedway.
And we secured an extra item. So the winner of this contest is going to get something a little bit on the unique side.
Man, I just scratched my head. I got so sunburnt yesterday.
And wasn't there somebody that said, "Gee, you ought to wear a hat today"? Didn't somebody say that to you?
That guy's an idiot. Hey, no, Tony
Probably
Stewart.
Kirk.
Tony Stewart and Christopher Bell announced they had entered into the Knoxville Nationals, the 360 Nationals, coming up this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at Knoxville Raceway. If you want to go see Tony Stewart race a 360 cubic inch sprint car, then you get the opportunity to do it at the Arnold's Motor 360 Nationals in Knoxville. Again, Thursday night is practice, Friday's qualifying, Saturday is last chance qualifiers, and all the features going on at Knoxville Raceway. I'm working on putting my plans together because, well, there's a certain driver that's now going that I have to go now. I didn't plan on going. I planned on taking the year off and saving the money, but I got to go now.
Yeah, and there's going to be 1,800 other drivers shooting for one certain driver.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not going to be much fun. But he's going to have a partner. He's going to have a blocker for him. Christopher Bell is going to be.
I don't think Tony
away.
Stewart's ever needed a blocker. He's make that card wide enough and fast enough. Our friend McKenna Haase, thanks for the hospitality on Friday over at Iowa Speedway.
Had a great chat with her.
Great hanging out with her and talking with her
and
a
the
little
three
bit.
NASCAR dudes.
Yep, she'll be hanging out at Knoxville this weekend. Good run for her last night at Knoxville Raceway. So to get kind of
55 car if you go over
for the 360 Nationals, and so much great stuff going on over the next couple of weeks. Make sure you pay attention. Next weekend, Code Red Cody Ledger will join us to talk about everything that's been going on in his season.
And that is a lot of stuff.
Steve Francis, the Kentucky Colonel, will also join us to talk about his thoughts in the Lucas Oil Late Model Series. Thanks for joining the Front Stretch. We'll do it all again next weekend. For Dirk Houston, I'm Dan Taylor. This has been the Front Stretch on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
Thanks for getting
This has been the Front Stretch Radio Show, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. To contact Dan or Dirk, find them on Facebook at The Front Stretch or email them at frontstretch590@gmail.com. If you missed any part of today's show or want to hear a previous show, subscribe to the Joe's Karting YouTube page, where you can find almost every Front Stretch show.